Exodus chapter 4, Moses and Aaron go to Pharaoh and they do the sign that God had told them to do, which is take your rod and cast it before Pharaoh and let it become a serpent. So Moses and Aaron went into Pharaoh and did as they were told, and Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. The Pharaoh also called the wise men and the sorcerers, or the magicians of Egypt did the same thing. But Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods. Now think about it. Throughout Egypt, you'll see snakes, you'll see cobras. This was the symbol. Even the way Pharaoh looks, it's a symbol of a snake. And God was making a statement to all Egyptians, especially Pharaoh.
When Nicole and I were in Egypt back in March, April, little did I realize how much my understanding of the Bible was going to grow. Just being there, walking around, seeing the different sites, it's unbelievable. Now, as you just saw in the video, the snakes are everywhere in Egypt. Thank goodness we didn't see any live ones around. They're pretty fierce. But I can only imagine how this must have impacted Abraham and Sarah. We're in the series called Man of Promise, and we're walking alongside Abraham and Sarah in their journey towards bringing Jesus into this world. And it's a powerful story account of how God protected his plan. At times, the plan was almost forgotten. If you remember last weekend's illustration, like that golden earring buried in the driveway, that plan of God seemed forgotten, but in God's timing, he gave that plan to someone else. He picked it up and gave it to someone else, and now we're looking at that someone else being Abraham and Sarah. If you have your Bibles with you, find the book of Genesis, chapter 12 and verse 10. The book of Genesis, chapter 12 and verse 10. Today's message is called Man of Promise, Kingdom. Last weekend, Man of Promise, Forgotten. And the main point is this. Throughout the journey towards the Man of Promise, the enemy offered some very alluring substitutes. He always offers these enticing, alluring things of the world and says, are you sure this is not better? Are you sure God promised that, but here's something far better? Try this. Recognizing those substitutes, recognizing those pitfalls, and choosing the true plan of God is the only way to go. And this morning's message, as we walk through this message, only those who keep their eye on the bigger plan of God will make it. Only those who keep their eyes on Jesus Christ and what he has to offer, not just in this life, but in the life to come, will ultimately make it. Genesis chapter 12 and verse 10. Now there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to dwell there. For the famine was severe in the land. And it came to pass when he was close to entering Egypt that he said to Sarai, his wife, indeed, I know that you are a woman of beautiful countenance. Therefore, it will happen when the Egyptians see you that they will say, this is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will let you live. Please say, you are my sister, that it may be well with me for your sake, and that I may live because of you. Now, if you were here last weekend, we learned how it all began in the Garden of Eden when God gave that judgment against Eve, against the serpent. In that judgment, in Genesis 3:15, it says, and I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. 3 levels of enmities will happen. The first is the very simple, which is women hate snakes. There is going to be this enmity between snakes and women throughout history. Of course, men hate snakes too, but on a scale, women hate snakes far more than men. But then there will always also be enmity between the descendants of the snake, the descendants of the serpent and the descendants of the seed of the woman. And then, of course, the last one, there will be enmity between snake, which means Satan, and Jesus. Of course, we know about that. But the middle one is what we're focusing on. The descendants of Satan will be those who despise God, those who want to deceive others into disobeying God. They are the descendants of the serpent, the descendants of the snake. But then there are the descendants of the woman. They are those who are not perfect, but they will seek to obey God. They will seek to lead others to God. Now keep in mind, last weekend I mentioned this, but I had someone ask me this question last night. We have a Saturday night service, and this person asked about, so Cain was Satan's child? I said, no. Don't misunderstand. It's an ideological descendants, not biological. Cain and Abel were still Adam and Eve's sons, but ideologically, Cain was more the seed of the serpent, the way he acted, the way he behaved, the way he killed his own brother. That's a mark of a seed of the serpent. Now, don't misunderstand also, just because you have certain affinities with the seed of the serpent doesn't mean that you're lost forever. It doesn't mean that, oh, that's it, you're going to hell. No, Cain also is going to be in heaven. You say, how do you know that? God put his mark on him. He talked to God. Albeit he did something horrendous, yet his heart ultimately was right with God. So it doesn't matter who you are, what you've done, you are never too far gone. Amen? That's something I want you to understand. You're never too far gone. It doesn't matter how horrible you are or what horrible things you've done. It doesn't mean that I'm locked into the seed of the serpent. I can never get out. No. God's grace will overcome whatever sin you have. The only thing God's grace cannot overcome is your own decision not to receive Jesus in your life. That's your choice. Now, last weekend we learned how this happened, and I also explained to you that Egypt was the kingdom of the snake. Egypt was the kingdom of the snake. Now, the venomous snake was truly the symbol or emblem of ancient Egypt. So when you look at this, Abraham and Sarah's journey, they're headed towards the kingdom of the snake. If you ever look at images, movies, pictures, hieroglyphs, there's always the snake on Pharaoh's mitre. The uraeus is what you call it. So pay attention to right on top. And the Egyptians both feared the snake, but they also trusted the snake. They feared the snake because of its power, because of the danger of its venom, but they also trusted it because it protected them against small vermin, small animals, rodents. And since the cobra would rear up and spit poison at anyone that would come against its young, it was associated with the female deity, and hence they would have this. By the way, this is King Tutankhamun's throne. Look at it. It's surrounded. By the way, that's not the throne. That was where they found his sarcophagus inside, surrounded by snakes. I mean, it's amazing how much this culture looked up and feared and hated snakes all together in one. Now, in Egyptian mythology, somebody said it this way: one should welcome the uraeus and spit on Apophis. Means in one hand they love snakes, in the other hand they hate snakes. I'm going somewhere with this. Don't miss this. There are many different kinds of gods and goddesses. If I were to stand here and list all the ones that had something to do with snake in Egyptian mythology, it'll be another hour. So many different kinds. Some of the main ones: Wadjet, which is the snake goddess of the marshes, the guardian of childbirth, and also of Pharaoh. That's what they have on their mitre, on their crown. Renenutet, which is the goddess of the cornfields, gives you beautiful harvest for the living, nourishment for the spirit of the dead. Meretseger, which is the goddess of the desert hills, the goddess of mercy and punishment, the watcher over the dead. And Apophis, as I mentioned, if you caught it earlier on, he is the god of death. He is the one who swallows the sun in the netherworld. So think about the sun goes down. Where does it go? Well, according to Egyptian mythology, it's the snake that is swallowing the sun, and then the sun god kills the snake and comes out, and this goes on every single day. So their lives were just surrounded by the snake and the snake mythologies. They had a reverence for snake. They had a revulsion for snake. Do y'all get the difference? We love the snake. We hate the snake. They had a fascination with snakes. The whole point is this: the enemy ruled their world for good or for bad. Now, I've said a lot of stuff in the past 5-7 minutes. What is my point? The point is this: Satan doesn't have to be all good or all bad for him to rule your world. There are people who hate snakes, who hate Satan, but they're still obsessed with the enemy. There are people who have sold their soul to the devil. It doesn't matter. As long as the enemy can rule over your mind, your way of thinking, as long as he's getting some attention, he doesn't care. Are y'all awake this morning? Whether you hate him or love him, as long as he is getting some attention, he doesn't care. So here's the question for you: how much attention is the enemy getting in your life? Whether you hate him or whether you love him. I doubt anybody in this place will stand up and say, I love Satan. I doubt anybody would say that. But I'm pretty sure many of you would say, the reason I am this, and the things that I do is because of the enemy, because of Satan. We are so much giving the enemy credit over our lives and our behaviors and the things that we do. Listen, you have the Egyptian disease. You have the Egyptian problem. That's how they were. On one hand, we love the snake. On the other hand, we hate the snake. But ultimately, you're obsessed with him. So the same thing is for you. Is the enemy controlling your life for good or for bad? How much time do you actually spend focusing on God or focusing on the enemy? Whether it's fear or obsession, he simply wants attention in your life. And how much is he getting? Because that's the Egyptian way. Good or bad, he wants attention. This morning as I'm preaching, you pray for me, because anytime you talk about the enemy, sometimes I'm surprised when people post things blatantly attacking the enemy. And I'm thinking, I hear what you're saying. Have you spent time enough on your knees in prayer before you posted that? You're trying to expose the enemy. Do you know what he will do to you for that? The audacity you have to say some of the things and the cute lines and the trite phrases, you have the audacity to do that without dealing with sin in your life? Without humbling yourself under the mighty hand of God and submitting yourselves to him, you're willing to stand up and do all this? He will eat your lunch. You would be better off not saying a word and working on your relationship with Jesus Christ than to outrightly challenging the enemy and saying things. So as I'm preaching to you, would you pray for me? So what happens here? Abraham, right now he's Abram, and his wife is Sarai. Their names haven't changed yet. They're going into the lair of the enemy. Isn't that amazing? You are the ones carrying the seed of the woman, and you're going into the kingdom of the seed of the serpent. He has no idea what he's about to do. So listen here to Genesis chapter 12, verse 14. He has made an unholy pact with his wife. By the way, beware of secrets. When you have secrets like this, it's a matter of time before the enemy is going to use them. This was an unholy pact. When we go there, tell them you are my sister. It's technically right. It's technically okay. No, it's not. So what happens here? Just the way Abram predicted, they came into Egypt, and that the Egyptians saw the woman, that she was very beautiful. And someone asked me yesterday at the Saturday night service, was every beautiful woman who came through the borders of Egypt in danger of being taken by Pharaoh? Actually, if you study extra biblical sources, Abram and Sarah were not just, a couple going across the desert. There's so much I don't have time to get into, but he was a king. She was a princess. They had almost like a small army with them. So when they came to the borders of Egypt, I'm sure they sent word ahead to warn the people, hey, we're coming, but not to attack. I'm sure the word went back to Pharaoh, hey, some small king has just arrived into our country. They had borders, by the way. We don't. Anyway, so moving along. So here's what happens. Verse 15. The princes of Pharaoh also saw her and commended her to Pharaoh. And the woman was taken to Pharaoh's house. He treated Abram well for her sake. He had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male and female servants, female donkeys, and camels. I mean, he loads Abram up with all of this. Livestock, servants, and I believe later on we'll see gold and silver. He is prospering. Now let me stop there as well. Just because you are prospering, make sure it is God who is blessing you. Amen. And not Pharaoh. Just because good things are happening in your life, always ask that question, God, is it you who are blessing me? Because you would be better off without that money, without that promotion, without whatever you think is God's blessing in your life. But right now, Abram is very happy. He's very excited, but something begins to happen. Listen to verse 17. But the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. We often think that the plagues in Egypt, in Exodus, were the first time God raised his hand against Egypt, but no, it happened under Abram. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, what is this that you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister? I might have taken her as my wife. Now, therefore, here's your wife, take her and go your way. Isn't that sad that an Egyptian Pharaoh has more integrity than a man of God, than the woman of God? Isn't that tragic when that happens in our lives, when those who don't follow God have more integrity, have more honesty? And so listen to verse 20. So Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away, and his wife, now pay attention to the last few words, and all that he had. Means Pharaoh did not say, hand me all the treasures back, give me all my livestock back, give me all my servants back. He said, no, take everything. Because even Pharaoh knew that these people were not ordinary people. They were following God's plan. And they had some idea, maybe not all idea, that they were the ones carrying the promise. Whatever that dream was, the Bible doesn't go in detail, but I believe that dream was telling Pharaoh, hey, listen, don't touch this man or his wife, especially his wife, because I am sending the promised one who will save the whole world. So now, Abram and Sarah have left Egypt. Listen to chapter 13, verse 1. Then Abram went up from Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot went with him to the south. Abram was very rich in livestock, in silver, and in gold. And he went on his journey from the south as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, to the place of the altar which he had made there at first. And there Abram called on the name of the Lord. Why is that important? Because he went into enemy territory. He had to come back out and surrender his life back to God. Once again, God saved the seed of the woman from the seed of the serpent. But now something else is going to happen. By the way, in that opening video, I said something about Moses and Aaron and how they threw down the rod, and the rod became a snake, and it swallowed up the other snakes, because Pharaoh brought his magicians, his sorcerers, his wise men, and they threw down their rods, which also became snakes, but Moses' rod swallowed up the others. Now again, it's an imagery of how God's plan was superseding the plan of the enemy. But let's move along. What happened here? As they have now come back into the land, they didn't come back empty-handed, but also they brought someone with them. Who did they bring back with them? Hagar. Let's back up for a second. Of course, Lot is always there. We're going to come up and talk about Lot in a moment. But they bring Hagar, an Egyptian maidservant. What's she going to do? Later on, Sarah is going to offer Hagar to her husband Abraham, and Ishmael will be born. And forever there's going to be rivalry right down to this day. People are fighting over the land. People are fighting over that part of the world because of a simple gift that was given from the kingdom of Satan, from the kingdom of the serpent. As I mentioned last weekend, Satan is bruised. He is not crushed. He is still slithering about. He is still doing whatever he can to destroy, to take as many people with him. So also, even before Jesus came, Abraham and Sarah left, but he gave them a little parting gift. Here's Hagar. But something else happened. That's what I want to focus on for the next few minutes that we have, because one of their traveling companions, as someone mentioned, Lot, took something far worse from Egypt than any material or physical thing. He took a mindset. Listen to Genesis chapter 13 and verse 5. Lot also, who went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents. And now the land was not able to support them, that they might dwell together, for their possessions were so great that they could not dwell together. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. The Canaanites and the Perizzites then dwelt in the land. So Abram said to Lot, please let there be no strife between you and me, and between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, for we are brethren. Is not the whole land before you? Please separate from me. If you take the left, I will go to the right. If you go to the right, then I will go to the left. Now pay attention to verse 10. And Lot lifted his eyes and saw all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like the garden of the Lord, referring to the Garden of Eden. But what else? Like the land of Egypt as you go toward Zoar. So here's something. Let's go back over here for a moment. They left the land. Pharaoh gave some parting gifts. Hagar now is with them, which is going to be a big disaster coming. But another traveling companion of Abram and Sarah was Lot. When he leaves Egypt, of course he has all the wealth because of Abram and Sarah, but he also walks away with a mindset which is, Egypt. Egypt. You know, when we were there in Egypt, going across the Nile River, I cannot begin to describe to you how beautiful it is, how lush it is, how green. I mean, this is just me filming with my phone. I was just blown away how green it is, because you always assume that it is desert. It's just wilderness, but you don't expect things to be so green. In fact, the Bible describes how do you water Egypt? The Nile River is simply by taking your foot. It means the soil is so soft, you can just make a trench and the water will go wherever you want it to go. Just green, lush, beautiful. And Lot, when he is leaving, he's going, I wish we didn't have to leave. Look at how beautiful this place is. Look at how lush, how green. When he left Egypt, Egypt went with him. Now I want you to understand that, because many of us are trying to achieve a lifestyle. A lifestyle we saw in a magazine, a lifestyle we saw in somebody we looked up to, somebody we admired. Some friend in your life has sold you a lifestyle of how you can do this and how you can do that and how you can enjoy life. And maybe you are a peddler in lifestyle. And I'm talking to you because I love you. And you know exactly, as I said those words, it just hits you, because you know at the counsel of a friend, you are not following God with the same passion that you did at one time. You bought into the Egyptian lifestyle. You love God, you give to God, you serve God, but it's always to a certain level, because you have been sold the Egyptian lifestyle. And it has very little to do with God. I hope some of you, your spiritual ears are perking up. What happens when you have this thing in mind? You spend your whole life, you will do whatever it takes, you will compromise serving God because you are struck by Egypt. You want that. And no matter where you go, you're always seeking that. You're always seeking that. Not realizing is that it comes from the land of the serpent. Wherever you are, if the Holy Spirit has just touched a nerve in your life, I hope you will not brush it off. I hope you will not shrug it off and laugh it off. I hope there is no distraction right now. I hope you will take this in, because this may be a final warning for someone's life before you go off the deep end. You say, I'm not going off the deep end, I'm good. No, you have this thing up here. Either you grew up with it, you saw it, some friend, even in church, sold it, and you're living for it. And I pray this morning that you will recognize that and you will change. Lot, listen to this. He saw this beautiful plain. You know what Lot should have done? God called Abram and Sarah. He should have told Abram, hey, look, I am a tag-along. God didn't call me. I'm following you. You pick. How many of y'all are awake this morning? You pick. You're the man of God. You are the woman of, she's the woman of God. The promise is coming through you guys. You pick, I'll take the leftover. Oh no, he was struck by Egypt. I want that. Thank you, uncle. I'll take that. He wanted Egypt. And of course, he got it. So what happens here? Listen to this. In verse 11, then Lot chose for himself all the plain of Jordan. And Lot journeyed east, and they separated from each other. Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain and pitched his tent even as far as Sodom. So when he was so allured, the Egyptian bug bit him. That was it. I'm going for this. And he pitched his tent as far as Sodom. By the way, it says right here in verse 13, but the men of Sodom were exceedingly, what's the word say? Wicked and sinful against the Lord. Means even when Lot did what he did, Sodom had a reputation. What was the reputation? The same that we know today. It was sodomy. It was homosexuality. It was a flamingly homosexual city. Hey, look, there's nothing new under the sun. Nothing new under the sun. Same thing that's happening today. Every sin we know today was happening back then, and Sodom was known for that, not just for homosexuality, but also adultery. Whatever you want to do, whatever makes you happy, go to Sodom and you can find it. But you see, are y'all still awake? He wanted that. Yeah, I know. It's close to Sodom, but have you seen how green and fertile and beautiful it is? Hey, look, we'll still be in church. We'll still watch online. Man, the kids are doing this and that and the other. We will find every justification to say, yeah, we have Sodom in our lives, but it's not as bad as you think. Now, I'm not going to take the time to read what happened in Sodom, but what happened in Sodom? What happened in this place? God heard and saw the wickedness of this city, and he himself came down, right? When the big man himself shows up, you know it's really bad. Jesus Christ, pre-incarnate, shows up with angels who go into the city, and the men are so wicked, they know these people are different, and yet they try to sodomize them. And of course, Abram tries to bargain with God and say, God, how about 50? How about 45? How about 40, 30? He bargains with God, but yet no righteous one was found except for Lot. I hope you're still awake. I'm not questioning your righteousness. I'm not saying that you're lost because you want this lifestyle. All I'm saying is, have you been bit by a lifestyle that has been sold to you from someone, maybe even in here? But it's not a good lifestyle. That lifestyle will ultimately destroy you and your family. What happens here? Long story short, Lot tries to convince his family to leave. You know what they did? They laughed at him. They said, Dad's so crazy. The angels had to pull them out. And then what was the tragedy that happened as they're running away from Sodom? What was the tragedy, the big tragedy? His wife looks back and turns into a pillar of salt. Now, we can argue and debate, what does that really mean? All I know is she was gone. All I know is something catastrophic happened. What would Lot give to once again have his family? You know, you and I have a very limited chance and opportunity to raise our children in the way of God. We have a very short window, men, to lead your wives in the way of God. And if you have been bit by the Egyptian bug, this message is for you. This message is for you. Lot would have never imagined, as he was in Egypt and enjoying the passing pleasures of sin and enjoying the beautiful view, and something inside of him said, wow, this is the place, this is the dream. This is where you can have a little bit of Jesus and a little bit of the world, and it's okay. Pastor Shah is just too radical. Some of you, I marvel your boldness in some of the ways you think about spiritual life. That somehow this is just over the top. This is just a little too much. And Christianity is down here. You don't need the little too much. What you don't see is in the distance that his family is about to die. His wife is about to be lost forever. And then you know the tragedy that happened. I mean, it just goes downhill from there. His own 2 girls deceived him into sleeping with them and having children. I mean, it did not stop at just, we used to live in the vicinity, then we moved into Sodom. But no, mom died too, but now we did this to dad. And look where we are. You know, the Bible describes Lot as a righteous man, as I mentioned to you. What would he give to go back to this place? You know, when you talk to certain people who have been down that road and ask them that question, what would you do to give back all this stuff? You know what they tell you? I would give anything to turn back time. Anything. Anything, so I could go back pre-Egypt. Here's a question for you. What are you willing to sacrifice for that dream? Even family? Even your marriage? Let me switch gears here. Our time is very limited. Only Jesus was triumphant here where all failed, because in Matthew chapter 4 and verse 8, the devil took Jesus up on an exceedingly high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to the Son of God, all these things I will give you if you will fall down and worship me. What did Jesus say? Away with you, Satan. You know, that's what Abraham should have done. That's what Lot should have done. Away with you, Satan. For it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only you shall serve. Let me close with several questions. Are you allured by the wealth of Egypt? What are you willing to sacrifice for the passing pleasures of sin? Can you see the distance? Can you see the future of the impact it will make on your children, on your marriage? And are you saved? Do you know Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? If you've never given your heart to him, today's a day to ask him to come into your life, forgive you of your sins, and take over. Now you're part of the seed of the woman, the line of Jesus Christ. And the question for some of you who are saved is, are you willing to leave Egypt? Yeah, you have Christ in your life, but you're still trying to live this lifestyle. Still trying to hang on to those friends. Hey, listen, either those friends are being won over by you or they're winning you over. There's the middle ground. Either you're becoming more like them or they are becoming more like you, coming to know Christ. So if that's not happening, you're becoming more like them. And here's a sad reality. They will somehow make it. You won't. How does that work? This morning, God is speaking to your hearts. Come kneel, come pray, come talk to God. Never given your life to Jesus Christ, come today. Have given your life to Jesus Christ, but you're trying to chase that dream, that lifestyle. It doesn't have God in it. You have no idea the consequences of your decisions in generations to come. If only you could turn back time, but you can't. Make the change today. Leave Egypt. Spiritually speaking, leave Egypt today.